Good day and welcome to Lightning EV Talk, Lightning E-Motors podcast on all things commercial electric vehicles. My name is Nick Bettis and I'm the Director of Marketing and Sales Operations here at Lightning E-Motors, and I'm joined by Ben Schroder, Senior Service Manager at Lightning E-Motors.
Hey everybody.
How you doing?
Good.
Great. So a little bit about why we do our podcast here. We conduct this podcast in order to educate people on all things electric vehicles, everything from technical aspects all the way up through business operations and how electric vehicles can fit into your fleet operations. So a little bit about Lightning E-Motors before we get started. We are a commercial electric vehicle manufacturer. We manufacture vehicles ranging from Class 3 through Class 8, as well as providing complete charging solutions, installation of charging solutions, telematics systems, and basically end-to-end services around commercial electric fleets to make it as easy as possible for our customers to deploy zero-emission vehicles. Now, with introductions out of the way, let's get to our topic today. We're conducting a series of podcasts right now around the concept of the fleet electrification equation. So we consider there's 6 variables in a successful deployment of fleet electric vehicles. 1 is vehicles, 2 is telematics, 3 is charging infrastructure and charging units, service and maintenance, financing, as well as funding and grant support around that. And today we're going to be talking specifically around maintenance and service. So that's why we've asked Ben to join us today. So let's get started. Ben, let's start off with a discussion around commercial vehicles and how does service on an EV compare to an internal combustion engine?
All right, Nick. Well, generally speaking, preventative maintenance is less, right? The requirement is less than an ICE vehicle. So we're not in the shop all the time. We're not struggling all the time to bring them in and do a bunch of preventative maintenance. We still want to do regular inspections. Mm-hmm. We still want to make sure the vehicle's in tip-top shape. But we could take our ZEV 3 for an example. The requirements for that, the first coolant change isn't until 150,000 miles. And then every 50,000 miles or 3 years after that from the first change. So not bad at all.
No.
The gearbox, also referred to as the transmission on our vehicles, has a 60,000 mile change interval, but it's only half a liter of fluid in our gearbox of standard 75-90 gear oil.
Great.
So
super
real minimal as far as like what I need to do to keep it on the road running from a day to day. One thing that is important to discuss though is when keeping a Lightning vehicle healthy is storage. Oh. So we're going to store a vehicle, whether it be for a week or a month or 6 months. Mm-hmm. And we do have to take some, steps to make sure that our HV batteries stay healthy as well as our 12-volt battery. Okay. Those steps are well defined in our supplementary owner's manual for our customers. Mm-hmm. And they can also just call us up and ask if they have any questions.
Great. So what are some other things that you don't have to do on an EV, or at least don't have to do as often on an EV that you would have to do on an internal combustion engine? I know I hear a lot that the brake systems are easier to maintain because of the regenerative braking. Can you go into any more details on what else you might not have to do? Absolutely.
So as you touched on, brake changes should be a little bit less, right? Mm-hmm. Because the motor is actually providing a lot of the brake force and putting that energy back into the batteries. We're not doing oil changes, so we're not changing oil filters. We're not doing fuel filters, no air filters. We still have a coolant system, so we have to maintain that. But it's at a little bit different, use as well, because you don't have all this heat coming off your combustion engine into the cooling system and building up pressure and doing all those things. You have a lower pressure system. Its general purpose is 1, to cool the battery system, and then 2, to give the passengers heat, just like a regular vehicle.
HVAC, sure. Okay, great. So what are some of the options around how commercial fleets can provide service for these? So, we could obviously do it, but are there other options for these fleets as they're thinking about, well, how am I going to keep these vehicles on the road?
Absolutely. So first of all, we do have standing service partnerships with mini shops already in a lot of different locations, such as EV Choice in LA, A to Z Bus, CFI, SoCal Fleet Services. And we recently added Frigid in Canada as another service partner. So when the time comes, we have a network out there to get people connected with and help them get their vehicle back on the road, or even to have just regular service performed. We also just deployed a newly developed training program that we can come out and we can help train a service partner that a customer already has, get them certified on EVs, not only is that going to help them take care of the Lightning vehicle, but many service shops are interested in this type of training because they want to be familiar with EVs now, right?
Moving into the future.
We're moving that way,
right.
so people want to get involved. And then another option for our larger customers that have like a fleet, they already have a shop, we can come out and provide that same level of warranty training to those fleet shops, certify them on warranty, and let them capture those warranty dollars back through Lightning and perform their own service.
Okay.
And then finally, as you alluded to earlier, we can always deploy one of our technicians out to the field. We can either use that as support for one of those service providers or service partners, or they can perform the work as well. And then we do have a network of service engineers in-house and senior technicians who provide remote support for those people.
Awesome.
And we definitely want to make sure that they know we're not going to leave you stranded. We'll get you back on the road.
All right. So there's lots of options on who can do it and how we get them trained. But we're never going to turn anybody loose without fully understanding beforehand how they're going to maintain these vehicles. That's great.
Absolutely.
So what if a fleet was to use their own technicians, what additional training or safety gear might they need or tools might they need in order to be effective at maintaining an EV over an ICE vehicle?
Okay. So the additional training, the main thing pre-rec for any individual wanting to work on an EV is to become HV certified. So they want to be able to work on high voltage, right? High voltage safely. Our vehicles are inherently safe. They have a lot of redundant safety systems in them, but we want to make sure that the individuals have the proper PPE, such as high voltage gloves, Cat 3, Cat 4 meters, FR rated clothing, and they've gone through that basic training to know, like, how do I disable a vehicle? How do I verify that there's no voltage on the system before I start working? That's really the main step, right? And then we want to go through familiarization programs, like one of our training programs, to get them familiar on all the vehicles. And then the tooling, honestly, is not much different. They're still going to use all their standard hand tools and shop tools that they use today. There's a few subtle changes need to be made, right? So we don't want their refrigeration system to have PAG oil. They have to switch it to POE, and those things cannot be mixed.
Okay.
If we mix them, we're going to have detrimental effects of the cooling system. We're going to have to come out and do a lot of work to get it up and running.
Okay.
They're also going to need to get a megometer, like I said before, a class 3, class 4 multimeter. And honestly, there's not really any other special tooling required.
Okay. So the tools that you've talked about so far, are any of those like break the bank level investments on the customer's part?
I wouldn't say break the bank level. I mean, a standard refrigeration machine, most shops already have, as long as they can get one dedicated to POE oil, and they may already have it depending on the shop that they have.
Okay.
And then their meters for their technicians. I mean, that's kind of like a mid-level tool. So you're talking like $400-ish for a meter. And the only other thing that someone might want to consider is buying one of our service tools, and that's going to help them talk to and diagnose the vehicle quicker.
Okay. So yeah, these being largely rolling computers at these days, right? You got to be able to have something that's going to tell you what's wrong with it. So, great. So it doesn't sound like there's anything that's, when you consider the cost savings associated with an EV anyway, having a couple of $400 tools in order to maintain an entire fleet really doesn't seem unreasonable, does it?
Yep.
All right. So let's switch from vehicles and talk a little bit about charging. So with any EV, there's going to be charging associated with that. And most fleets are going to do depot charging, where you've got chargers in house. What can our customers or the market expect to have to do as far as maintenance on those?
Okay, so there is some maintenance that is required on chargers. From what I understand, there's some filters, fans, other components that can corrode over time, and we want to do preventative maintenance on those chargers just like we do on a vehicle. My background is in power gen, so I'm used to thinking of it like on an automatic transfer switch in power gen. You have to go in there, inspect it, lubricate it, check it out periodically and make sure it's healthy. I think it's the same concept with these chargers, right? So you're going to want to bring in a charger technician who can either be arranged through Lightning or directly through the manufacturer of the charger, and just periodically do preventative maintenance on the chargers. Keep them healthy and keep them going.
Pretty straightforward.
Yep. Yeah, pretty straightforward.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about fleet telematics. So on all of the Lightning vehicles today, there's standardized telematics. We call it Lightning Insights. How does that help your team and their team also to diagnose problems, do preventative maintenance, that sort of thing?
All right, yeah, absolutely. So telematics gives the user and Lightning insight into the health and current status of the vehicle and location pretty much at all times. Oftentimes, telematics will help identify any problems early and also helps with preliminary diagnostics of vehicle issues before a technician has to be deployed. So I had a really good example of this recently. We had a vehicle that was displaying a little bit high temperature on a gearbox. Nothing super critical, but it just seemed a little higher than usual. We were able to deploy a tech, resolve the issue. There was no additional downtime or lost service or road call associated with that vehicle. It was a really good experience for the customer and for our technician. And then other good examples are, we're going to deploy a technician for, some issue that a customer's called in about. We'll review the telematics data and oftentimes be able to have at least the first few steps in the diagnostic process, if not the full diagnostic story, before we deploy them, so they can come out prepared with the right parts and tools to do the job.
Perfect. Yeah, streamline things as much as possible. And we monitor all of those telematics all the time, right? So
That's correct.
If something comes up and we see it in our network operations center here, we can actually notify the customer in advance that there appears to be something, what brake line pressures or something that may be wrong. You might want to check out that particular piece, right?
Yeah. And we're seeing the health of our vehicles on a screen all the time. So if we see something that's dropping down, where we give them an actual score, and the score could be affected by driver behavior. It could also be affected by the charger it's integrating with, or it could be affected by the vehicle itself. But we can look at that score so we know, hey, this looks a little funky. We click into it, we dig into the telematics data, and we can find out what's going on.
Great. That's perfect. So let's go back to the vehicle maintenance a little bit and having their own technicians work on, or even Joe down the street on the corner who you use now. Would a EV customer expect their mechanics to be breaking open batteries and opening motors and replacing pieces, or is this more of a rip and replace relationship?
Yeah, so that's absolutely where we're at. So one big transition for technicians is you're not having to go in and rebuild an engine, set an overhead, set all your cam and your crank bearings and get everything in there, set your head bolts, get everything perfectly lined up. In fact, you're just going to say, oh, okay, I've got an HV heater that's failed. I found that out through telematics, or I did a few other diagnostic steps. I ordered the heater, I replace it, and I'm back up and running. And as far as motors go, it's a simple R&R procedure, and then we send that motor back in for warranty.
Yeah, so super simple. So in your experience, as you've been out talking to mechanics and technicians that you have purchased our vehicles, is there a fear on their part about, I'm going to lose my job because I don't understand this, or are they actually excited about being able to learn a new skill and, I don't want to say move into the 21st century, but become even more relevant than they already are? Yeah,
so I think that's a really good talking point in general for our industry, is how are we going to transition the current technician workforce into EVs? And one of the biggest places that they seem to kind of hold up or be a little fearful is there is some fear. Is it safe for me to work on it? I don't really understand the technology. I'm not sure if this is something I can do. Or, am I going to lose my job because now, I'm not going to be able to turn a wrench on these. And I can say from my own personal experience, I did not have an EV background. I came to Lightning, and I can follow our work instructions as a technician. I have experience in the industry. I've been in the industry for over 20 years. But I can follow our work instructions and perform the work without any issue. And just allowing technicians to be familiar and be comfortable with the vehicle, talking to them, showing them how they're safe, why they're not dangerous, and also how to maintain themselves safely when working on them. It eases those fears, and we can get them trained up super quick, and it's not a hard transition for them at all.
That's great. It's great. All right. So the last question. If you could provide one piece of advice for a fleet manager that's looking to go electric around service and maintenance, what would that be?
I would say allowing your technicians. So many technicians right now are eager to learn and be prepared to work in the EV industry. Even techs that are applying here right now, they're telling me, hey, we realize this is where the future is. We're ready to go. We have a chance to embrace that future understand that these vehicles are not complicated to work on, invigorate a workforce, and change that fear into excitement.
Great.
And I think that they're going to realize that this can be as rewarding, if not more rewarding, than their current career paths.
Great. It's almost like a recruiting tool too.
It
You can
is.
use this as a perk for an incoming mechanic or technician. Say, hey, we'll even get you trained up on how to work on electric vehicles and give you
Absolutely.
some future job skills. So that's
Absolutely.
great. All right. Well, that's all the questions we had today. So I'm going to thank everybody for listening, and we invite you to watch the other 5 components to this series on the electrification equation. They're posted on our website as well. So thank you again, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time on Lightning EV Talk.